Chapter 6. Running for dear life. Tactical retreat. A chance meeting. He was faster than anybody Link had ever seen. 1 second, Russell was politely introducing himself, and the next he had darted forward and was only barely met in time by the butt of Visen's spear. He caught the end of it and tried to wrest it out of Visen's grasp, but Visen countered by bringing the blade across to meet Russell's sword.
Link, what are you doing? Run! Now!
Russell lifted his sword into the air, forcing Visen's spear up with it. He used his free hand to punch the Garuto in the stomach, and then swiped downwards with his blade. Visen once more narrowly avoided death, bringing his armored right arm up just in time to deflect the blade. Russell's sword hissed along his gauntlet arm in a shower of sparks, scoring the metal deeply.
Get out of here!
But still he hesitated. Colin and Ashe were already gone, but how could he leave Visen to die? Although there wasn't much he could do without a sword, he felt obliged to do whatever he could to save the lives of his comrades.
Link, I'll be fine, just go. Now. That's an order.
Visen parried 2 more strikes. He turned and left Zelda's vault. In the central circular room, Colin and Ashe were waiting at the sealed stone doorway that led outside.
Link, we need the stone. We've got to get out of here.
Without looking, he tossed the gossip stone at them, and then sprinted right past the door and into Russell's vault. There was a plethora of weapons to choose from, many of which were no doubt magical and powerful, but he felt it was best to stick with what he knew. He seized a sword edged with gold. The blade shone with deadly sharpness. It fit perfectly into his hand, almost as if he had wielded it before. He gave the sword an experimental twirl, the weight was perfect. His whole being still thrumming with the power he had used to open the vault, he dashed back across the circular vestibule and into Zelda's vault, where Visen was still managing to hold his own against Russell. They both looked up.
Link, no!
Visen's shout went unheeded. He made brief eye contact with Russell, and the commandant smiled grimly and nodded.
Midna.
Ganondorf coughed. The high street was swathed in a cloud of dust kicked up by the collapsing building. He couldn't see anybody, trapped in a world that was suddenly veiled in grey.
Midna. You alive?
The countless tiny chips of masonry burned his throat. He tore a strip of cloth off the cape on his back and held it over his mouth and nose. A sharp rock flew out of the grey cloud surrounding him and struck him in the back, high, on his shoulder. It was followed quickly by 2 more similar projectiles, which struck him in the calf and chest. Silence. 3 more rocks, simultaneously, flew at him from 3 different directions. They were larger than the first 3, and by ducking quickly he managed to avoid 2. The last one clipped him in the back of the head and drew blood. The barrage of stone was not letting up now, raining down on him from all angles. Ganondorf ran, as fast as he could, in any direction, trying to avoid the deadly rain. Rocks flew at him, at eye level, and he barely managed to deflect them with a hastily summoned magic shield. No matter where he ran to, he could not escape the opaque wall of dust or the steady assault of jagged masonry.
Stop this, he said.
Vadi's voice echoed from all around him. Instead of the unintimidating tones of a child, the magical amplification and cold menace in his words shook the air around Ganondorf.
You struck me,
he declared darkly.
I think you've...
Ganondorf batted a piece of stone twice the size of his head out of the air and sidestepped a flying piece of the high street.
Quite made up for that. Nobody strikes me in lives,
the wind mage calmly intoned. The air around Ganondorf was moving furiously now, and he was trapped in the center of a whirling dervish of dust with magically propelled rocks assaulting on him from all sides. He was struck in the back of the head, hard enough to blur his vision and fill his ears with a dull ringing. More missiles pelted him in the back, the legs, the arms. He was forced to his knees.
How old are you, Ganondorf?
He was clued in the stomach and, for the first time, felt real pain as his breath left him in a rush.
How ancient? How powerful?
Another blow to the head. He gritted his teeth.
You want to stop this, Vadi?
Part of a house hit him in the back, hard enough to shatter. Ganondorf collapsed in the street, and then forced himself back up again. Vadi taunted him.
You are going to die here, today, broken in the high street. The Princess Zelda will live forever. I have a long and fruitful rule ahead of me, Wind Mage, with your head hanging above the city gates.
A stone swept his right arm from underneath him, and he collapsed again. Before he could get up, he was pelted once, twice, thrice in quick succession.
You? King? Ha! You're nothing more than a useless plaything of the gods. Forever a footnote in the pages of history. Doomed to die eternally on the point of the same blade, again and again and again. Pathetic.
An enormous boulder, as big as the Gerudo King himself, fell from the sky to dash him to pieces. A killing blow, on the heels of this revelation. Ganondorf lazily reached out for it, and it dissolved into dust to join the storm swirling around him.
What did you say? What? How did you?
More rocks came flying at him at once, dozens, and Ganondorf dissolved them out of the air the exact same way. The back of his hand glowed with power, a burning gold insignia. The enchantment was dispelled with a dull thump of rushing air, and the cloud of dust surrounding Ganondorf at last lifted.
Damn!
Vadi snatched up a sword from a fallen soldier, but the effort was futile. Ganondorf disarmed him easily, leaving the blade to clatter uselessly against the cobblestones, and wrapped one hand around the mage's throat.
What did you say?
He demanded. Vadi smiled widely.
Don't you know?
He laughed, childlike once more.
Know what?
When the mage kept on laughing, Ganondorf slammed him into the shattered road. Bluish blood ran from Vadi's nose and mouth.
Tell me.
Vadi rolled over.
It's just a dance.
Before Ganondorf could react, or do anything, Vadi slammed his fist into the stone beneath him. The roadway detonated violently, further pelting Ganondorf with countless chips of jagged stone, to no effect. For a split second, though, he was distracted. In the split second Vadi launched himself upwards. Ganondorf felt a small hand on his face and the surge of gathering magic. Desperately, he slashed upwards, the blade of light coming into contact with the charged magic in the Wind Mage's hand. With a sharp crackle, Vadi's spell sizzled off the blade of the sword, and he was tossed to the ground, sliding to a stop in the heels of his shoes. Ganondorf swung twice more, but Vadi was light enough and quick enough to dance out of the way, flinging bolts of magic behind him at the charging Ganondorf. Something hit him in the back, hard enough to overbalance him and send him crashing to the stone in a hasty roll away from another series of magical attacks.
I did it.
Zant was standing atop the wreckage, eyes unfocused in rapture. Two opponents now, then. Breaking into a curving dash towards the triumphant Zant, Ganondorf managed to remain just ahead of the arcing bolts of magic that both viziers were now launching at him. He tried to slash Zant's neck from his shoulders, but the twilight twisted and pirouetted impossibly, laughing the whole time.
She's dead. She's dead.
Zant dodged again, but this time Ganondorf managed to land a heavy kick that sent him sprawling. He was prevented from striking a killing blow because of Vadi leaping forward and striking him from behind. He deflected one mage's blow without taking his eyes off the other, but it was too late. Zant was up and on his feet again. Ganondorf not only suddenly outnumbered but was facing two supremely skilled opponents. The odds were increasingly tilting against even his favor.
I am the last. The greatest. The Twilight Princess is dead.
Zant continued to screech his victory maniacally, even as he continued to fight.
You'll die here.
Vadi seemed just as wild.
I will kill you. I will break this pathetic charade. Dead.
Zant was fueled by some otherworldly madness, his magic was ferocious, his barrage unceasing.
Dead. Dead. Dead.
Vadi was just as possessed in his viciousness, determined to strike a killing blow.
What then? When the goddess's plan lies crushed beneath my heels in the high street? Tell me, Ganondorf, what then?
The two circled closer, and Ganondorf worked furiously to stave off their attacks.
What are you talking about? Tell me. I demand it. Perhaps Din herself will manifest in fire to save you? Perhaps the gods themselves will pluck you from death's jaws. I have killed her. I am INVINCI.
Zant stopped mid-sentence and looked down. There, half buried in collapsed stone, was a woman. Tall, voluptuous, and with hair as fiery as any Ganondorf had ever seen. Her skin was grey and slashed open in many places, dark blood ran in streams down her face, her arms, her torso. She had lunged forward and wrapped both her arms around Zant's left leg. The mage tried furiously to yank it free, but could not. Midna's gleaming yellow eyes were wide and manic.
Burn,
she said. The fire flew from her fingertips and Zant burst into flames, and she held tightly onto him even as her own magic scorched her arms and face. Twin cries of agony rent the air, although Midna's was laced with victorious laughter. The smell of burning flesh and hair was repulsive. Suddenly the fire went out, body depriving the flames of the air they needed to survive. Zant exploited this newfound opening and kicked Midna in the face, shattering her nose and sending her sprawling backwards in a spray of blood. The two Twilight were both severely wounded and heavily burned, half of Midna's face reduced to an angry dark wheal. Ganondorf darted forward and hauled her bodily out of the stone fragments trapping her, and she screamed again as he did it. At least one of her legs was broken, twisting sharply beneath her.
No.
Vadi tried to stop him, but Ganondorf swung his sword and sent a beam of energy flying at him, and he was forced to block it. By the time he had recovered, Ganondorf was gone.
Where are you?
Midna panted, slung ignominiously over Ganondorf's shoulder. She weighed much more than a small imp now, and was nearly as tall as Ganondorf himself.
Have to kill. Need to kill him. We have to get out of here,
Ganondorf said, running at full force through the back alleys and dark passages of Hyrule, leaping down staircases and, in some occasions, off bridges. Always heading down.
Take me back.
She struggled to speak.
Still alive.
Ganondorf readjusted his grip. His gauntlets were slick with her blood.
You can kill him on a later occasion,
he said.
Right now worry about your own self. Gan. On. Dorf. What is it? I. Don't die. I. Need. A drink. Don't die.
He exhorted. She swung limply in his grip, but breathed still.
Won't. Magic will. Midna. Magic. Will protect me. I have they.
She spit out. He forced himself to run faster, down and down and down.
Shadow. The shadow. Will.
It was quickly becoming apparent that he had no idea what he had just gotten himself into. Both Link and Vissen were fighting furiously, desperate to slip in one strike past the lightning-fast guard of Russell. The Commandant seemed to be everywhere at once and, although there were two of them, the fight was decidedly unfair. Link swung a gilded sword he had taken from Russell's own vault and met the Commandant's worn blade. The force of the impact shook his arm all the way up to his shoulder. Russell was already in motion again, sweeping backwards to block Vissen's spear and then hooking a foot beneath the older man's knee and sending him sprawling. Vissen's life was saved by Link hurrying to distract the Commandant, and the two of them sparred ferociously, blades meeting and then coming apart in a flurry of strikes. It was increasingly obvious that there was no way they could win this fight. Vissen had lifted himself to his feet again and charged, taking his spear in both hands and cross-checking Russell hard across his back, but once again was too slow to get a clean hit in. Russell's sword embedded itself deeply in the wood of the spear, nearly cutting the weapon in two.
Time to go.
Vissen shouted, twisting the spear as hard as he could. Both his weapon and Russell's escaped their grips and clattered to the floor. Vissen kicked them into the corner of the vault. He turned and ran, pulling Link away from the fight. Colin and Ashe were long gone. The bodies of 3 soldiers who had been guarding the door lay silently on the floor in pools of blood, the rest were nowhere to be seen. They rushed towards the elevator. The doors of the shaft had been pried open and the wooden lift was nowhere to be seen. In its place was the network of ropes and pulleys that operated the machine, disappearing into the dark shaft below. Link half turned to see Russell already running after them. Vissen leapt into the shaft and grabbed a rope, sliding down it into the darkness, out of sight.
Go! Go! Go!
Link followed suit, stabbing through his coat with the sword and creating a makeshift sheath, snatching a rope and sliding with dizzying speed into the blackness below. They fell in the darkness.
Link! Stop here! Here!
He gripped the rope hard and forced himself to stop beside Vissen, although the thick twine sliced painfully into his ungloved hands, and the nobleman's coat flapped uncomfortably about his knees. He missed his old tunic. They were in front of what was obviously another door for the lift. Light shone out into the darkness through closed wooden double doors.
Come on, swing, we can break it.
Vissen started swinging back and forth on the rope, picking up momentum. Link followed suit. They swung in an increasing arc, until their boots bumped against the closed doors of the shaft.
Hurry!
They kicked off the doors and swung until their backs bumped into the other side of the shaft, and then fell forward, colliding with the wood hard, feet first. It buckled but did not break. Above them, Link could hear another person sliding down the ropes. On the next swing, they kicked out and smashed the shaft door open. Propelled backwards, Link hit the wall hard and, on the return swing, was able to get a foothold on the floor outside and haul himself out, reaching back to help Vissen. They were in an unfamiliar corridor, lit warmly with torches and tiled with fine marble. Artwork hung on the walls in intervals. The opulence and order was as far as one could get from the jumbled disorganization of the lower portions of the city.
What now?
Link asked.
Keep going. Find a window. We gotta get out of this castle.
They were at the end of the corridor when Russell came swinging out of the elevator shaft, not even breaking stride as he hit the ground running. Link and Vissen burst through a set of double doors and into a spiral staircase. They slid down the banister to the bottom and picked another door, this one leading to an empty atrium. Another door took them through a parlor filled with chatting bourgeoisie who were too shocked to even shout at the disturbance, and the one after that through an indoor garden of exotic trees and flowers.
You're kidding me,
Link said. The garden was in a room made almost entirely of glass, giving Link a view of the city outside. He had not realized how high up they were. The city beneath them was nothing more than a mass of shapes, nearly infinite in complexity.
Wish I was, kid. Try not to kill yourself.
Vissen threw a potted shrub to the floor, backed up and took a running jump through one of the glass walls, falling out of sight. Link heard him land heavily and then jump again right away.
Hell!
Link hesitated until Russell came barreling into the room, skidding to a stop when he saw Link standing still in front smashed-out pane.
You're going to jump, aren't you?
He asked resignedly.
Are you going to let me go?
The commandant sighed.
Can't. Sorry. Then I guess I have to jump. Guess so. Good luck. You too.
Link hurled himself after Vissen, landing in a roll on a rooftop below. Russell was already in the air after him, and Link was on his feet and leaping down to another rooftop. He could see Vissen making leaps further down the castle's structure. The building was monstrous in size, essentially another city sitting atop the massive one below it. Link landed on a sloped rooftop and slid down it in a hail of falling tiles. Russell, moving faster than he was, skidded up behind him and tried to slice his legs out from beneath him in a sweeping stroke of his blade. Unprepared, Link barely met it with his own sword, blocking clumsily. The hasty movement smashed both weapons into the roof, and Link's sword rattled out of his grip and fell. He dodged Russell's sudden attack and leapt after it, snatching the golden-edged blade out of the air and then landing in a rooftop garden. His feet ached in their unfamiliar shoes. He looked frantically about for Vissen, but the older man was nowhere to be seen. He had lost him in the momentary distraction. Russell thudded to a landing in front of Link and stepped forward swinging. Their blades clashed briefly before Link caught the commandant in his own and forced the locked weapons upwards, catching Russell off guard.
Pretty.
Link punched him in the face with his free hand hard enough to jam his finger.
Ow!
He swung again, but Russell swept under the blow, catching his arm and flipping him onto his back. Link used the momentum to roll backwards, flipping adroitly to his feet and settling into a fighting stance.
Like I was saying, you're pretty good.
Russell was breathing hard.
You aren't too bad yourself.
Link was panting as well.
I'm the best.
He lunged, but Link ducked and took a flying leap off the roof. He could see the lush green lawns of the royal complex not too far below, dotted in places with wandering nobles and patrolling guards. 3 more leaps and another controlled slide sent him crashing to the grass, more broken tiles thudding to the ground around him. Circling, he could see a place where the wall surrounding the complex was shattered and scorched, with smoke rising in the air. There were no guards stationed, and the gates had been blasted apart. He took off in a sprint for this opening, bursting through the smashed gate and into a war zone that looked as though it had been a street at one point. Weaving his way through the wreckage, he bumped into a lone figure, a small purple child.
What in they?
He was already gone. Behind him, Russell passed by the same kid. Link heard him say, "Hey."
Russell? Hi.
He started weaving through buildings, hoping to lose the commandant in the hopelessly complicated maze of the city. Link had the foresight to head down whenever possible, making more leaps from buildings and off bridges, shunting aside confused pedestrians. Still Russell dogged his every step. Link recognized that they were headed for the river that ran through the center of the city. The chase wound its way through several more alleyways and narrow side streets before they burst into the wide-open plaza of the market district, shops filled with customers at the height of the day. Link ran along the river, where countless boats and barges were moored on a haphazard network of docks and piers. Children fished idly from bridges over the river while Zora swam lazily by below. They were both slowing now, the long chase taking its toll on both of them. Link noticed that, although they had passed by several guards, Russell had not called out for assistance. Perhaps the commandant had some code of honor that he would not see broken. He weaved his way through the throngs along the riverbank, but he already knew that trying to disappear into the crowd was useless. Just behind him, Russell was elbowing people out of his way, forcing a path through to Link. Outrunning him seemed to be a bad option. Accidentally knocking a red-headed woman into a fruit stall, he scanned the craft lined along the riverbanks and the buildings along the street, searching frantically for some means of escape.
Hey! Over here!
There was a girl standing on the deck of a moored boat, a 1- or 2-person vessel. It consisted of nothing more than a tiny deck and a small cabin, the whole thing painted red and topped with an old lion figurehead hanging from the bow. The girl undid the ropes mooring it to the dock, and began steering it out towards the middle of the river. She waved Link over.
Come on.
He took 4 long strides along the dock and leapt, sailing through the air and just barely coming to land on the deck. Russell followed just behind him along the dock but skidded to a stop at the edge. The boat had drifted out too far into the river for him to make the leap. He was doubled over, panting.
That was some chase. Once again, my compliments.
The commandant waved a hand in salute.
No shame in losing to a skilled opponent.
Link returned the gesture.
Till we meet again. Oh, bet on it.
Russell shouted as they drifted even further away from him, picking up speed as the current of the river caught them. Pedestrians were starting to turn and mutter, realizing just who was standing on the dock yelling out at Link.
I suppose I'd better get back up,
he said, turning.
You know, there'll be hell to pay because of you. Look into a different line of work, then.
Russell laughed and disappeared into the crowd. Link still remained on guard. It was difficult to believe that the commandant would just give up so easily after such a heated pursuit. There was a tap on his shoulder. Link whirled around and nearly took the girl's head off, stopping himself just in time. She didn't even flinch.
Whoa! Easy. Calm down. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't worry about it.
She smiled.
First things first. Pay up. What?
She pointed at the gilded sword Link had stolen from Russell's vault.
You owe me. Big time. I just saved your ass from the goddamned commandant, I expect some restitution.
So this was why she had helped him. A quick profit. Still, he couldn't complain, he owed her his life, after all.
Fine.
He handed over the sword. She hefted it, running her finger delicately along the blade and nodding appreciatively when it drew blood.
This is really sharp. You steal this from inside the castle?
Link nodded. He guessed it was better that she think that than reveal why he had really been up there. Although, now that he thought about it, he still didn't have a clear idea what that reason was.
This is 3,000 or 4,000 rupees, easily. I've never seen a sword this nice. Of course, it's hot, so I'd have to fence it at a discount. Especially if they knew where it had come from.
She was pretty. Link would have said beautiful, except that she broadcast this aura of toughness that didn't seem to fit with the word. Link watched lean muscles move beneath the smooth skin of her arms and legs, tanned a rich brown by many days no doubt spent working on deck, the river being one of the few places in the city where the sun hit the residents all day long. Her hair was the color of gold, or at least it had originally been. It was sun-bleached now, and tied atop her head in some unique curled style he had never seen before.
Hey, you payin' attention over there? Oh. Yes.
She tossed the sword lightly from hand to hand.
I got a deal for you. I know some people in this town. I think I can get about 3,000 for the sword here, how about I give you half? That's my seller's fee, as well as a bonus for saving your life.
He thought it over. Did he really need money? The first thought was yes, but then he remembered Ganondorf steadfastly refusing to accept charity from Telma the night he had been rescued. And besides, 1,500 rupees was 1,500 richer than he had been at the beginning of the day.
Deal.
She smiled.
Excellent. My name's Tetra. Link. Good to meet ya, Link. Anywhere I can drop you off. Do you know the Spirit Temple?
The grin fell off her face.
Do I know the Spirit Temple?
She opened the door to the tiny cabin, and Link could see a cramped bunk, sea chest, and some oddly glowing navigational equipment. The ship was powered by magic, it seemed.
So you're with the Garuto? Yes. I only just joined up. I actually haven't been in Hyrule very long, just a few days.
She spun a wheel, and the ship turned in the water.
Those guys are a piece of work, let me tell you.
Link leaned against the prow of the tiny ship, frowning.
How do you mean?
She shrugged.
They're dangerous. That Ganondorf can talk all he wants about fighting for us, but too many innocent people end up dying for my tastes. What did you say?
She raised an eyebrow.
What? You didn't know? Just the other day, one of the magistrates, Dotur, murdered. Lot of upper-class citizens have been dying. You're part of a terrorist group, Link. Yeah.
He said.
And what about you? Who are you?
Tetra twirled the gilded sword and winked at him.
I'm just an old-fashioned mercenary, doing what I can to get by, sailing up and down the river Hylia. Did you know, it runs all the way down to the sea if you follow it long enough? It takes a couple months, though, I've only ever been that far down twice. Well, if you're a mercenary, doesn't that involve violence, too?
He was suddenly suspicious of Ganondorf and his motivations, but he hid it by questioning Tetra.
Bit hypocritical of you to call us terrorists when you're a little better.
She gave him a smile that seemed to bemoan his innocence.
But the difference, Link, is that I don't lie about it. Talk to a Gerudo for 5 minutes, and you would think they believe that they're on a mission from the gods themselves. You can't deny that things in this city need to change.
She sighed, joining him on the deck and watching the riverbank drift by. A green-haired woman was doing her laundry, and 2 children were fishing with bored looks on their faces.
People have survived hundreds of years the way things are now. Do you honestly think you lot can do any better?
We can try, he said, but he didn't really say what he was thinking. Tetra voiced his suspicions for him, however.
There's one thing you need to understand about this city, Link, everybody's just playing you.
He thought of Tattle, lying to the crowds in the market district. Midna, who was able to cajole a bargain out of her. Crimea, coming to town to make a profit and then abandoning the place when night fell. And now, Tetra, who had saved his life only to demand money from him.
If you want to survive in this place, you need to look out for yourself, first and foremost. You can't rely on anybody else, and you can't let anybody else take advantage of you.
The sun had crossed the highest part of its arc across the sky, and was now slowly descending into the jagged edges of the city surrounding them. They passed under the shadow of one particularly high tower with tall stained glass windows along its circumference.
Everybody you meet here is using you, Link. Everybody. Remember that, if you want to survive. Even you, then.
She winked again, tapping the sword she had taken from him.
Especially me. Is that really what this place is, then? Nothing but thousands upon thousands of liars? Cheaters? Thieves? Gods, no wonder things are this way.
She seemed regretful to have put him in this mood.
When you put it that way.
He was suddenly filled with a great melancholy. Here he was, lost in an infinite city so different from anywhere he had been before, filled with darkness both in the hearts of its people and the streets at night.
So then what should I do? I want to help people, but you're telling me they'll just take advantage of me. Not everybody's like that, Link. And I'll tell you what you should do. What?
The ship bumped into a wooden dock. They were in a part of the city Link had never seen before.
You should let me buy you a drink.
Chapter end.